Network Next Gen, the podcast, inspiring design industry hustlers.
Thank you guys for coming and joining us for the podcast today. I'm so excited to talk about our recap for Network Next Gen Denver. We like to do these fun recap episodes, really touching and highlighting on some of the exciting topics that we talked about, overall impressions, and just being able to share the next geners who are in our community and let them get to know you as well. So today we have Renee Fine and Nicole Benjamin. So this will be fun. We have one of our sponsors from Cambria, which is Nicole, and then one of our next geners from HCM. So let's just start out. I'd love to hear a little bit more about both of you guys. So Renee, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I am Renee Fine. I work at HCM in Denver, and I feel like I'm on the cusp of no longer being a next gener. I'm at 9 years with HCM, and prior to that, I was with two other firms for 2 years. I do still feel like I have a connection to the younger designers that are coming in, because I feel like it was just yesterday that I was having my first day in the office, figuring out what didn't they teach us in school and what type of experience I was in for. But at the same time, I have so much knowledge and wealth of experience to share with the next geners. So like I said, I'm on the cusp. I'm happy to be here and had a wonderful dinner with you guys a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. All right, Nicole, tell us more about you.
Yeah, so I'm kind of feel like almost the same, Renee. Like, yes, I'm a next gen, but I don't know. So my background is an architect in Colorado. I went to school for architecture, worked in a couple larger architecture firms in Denver for a good amount of years until I kind of switched over to the other side as a material rep. So I am now with Cambria. Next week is actually my 6-year anniversary with Cambria, which kind of like you said, Renee, right? It's like, I feel like I have all this experience between like my architecture life and now, just my material knowledge life that I feel like I'm still learning things every day. And I still remember, just getting all that info as a younger, architect and designer. And so, yeah, definitely on that cusp, I feel, but in a good, I'm going to go positive in a good way. And I guess that's really it in a nutshell. So I'm on the commercial side of Cambria in Colorado, which we are broken out through residential and commercial. And that's what my background and what my gig has been for the past 6 years.
Yeah,
So
totally.
Thank you again for having us on and, having Cambria be a part of that dinner. I talked about it for weeks afterwards, honestly.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Yeah. I mean, like you guys both said, is what's cool is really targeting the 20s and 30s is we get such a wide range and bringing in these amazing sponsors. The diversity of the voices and topics of conversation are really unique and authentic. And so we were at Coo Hills in downtown Denver, right by the river, right?
A small river. You could call it a creek.
A creek. Yes. Right by the creek, which was awesome. And we had the whole restaurant to ourselves, private room. The food was awesome. The table was stacked. So I'd love to hear from both of you. Kind of what were your impressions of the dinner? What did you think overall? Just so we can get high level, and then we'll dive deep into some of the topics that we touched.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was really wonderful to walk in and see some familiar faces as well as some new faces and a wide range of ages too. Interior design is not necessarily always going to be the 20-something that just graduated from school. I think we have a very transitional occupation where someone can go back to school, be a non-traditional student, and then enter the field. So it was nice to see that there was just all these ranges of ages. We had a couple men there too, which was great. But the dinner was wonderful, accommodated all dietary restrictions and great wine, a good conversation. The table was set up wonderfully so that we could all talk and see each other rather than one long rectangular table. It was more oval. So it just allowed for really good engagement and conversation.
Yeah. I was going to say that too. I really appreciate the structure, not only of like the setup for everybody. It just felt very comfortable. I thought like very intimate, which I think helped everybody in the room just really open up and want to discuss things. I feel like it was like a safe place to do that between not only the setup and really the gorgeous restaurant, but also the structure. I think, Kelsey, the structure that you had for the night, I really appreciated. And yes, we like had a very fluid discussion, but I think it was also a very like we didn't get totally derailed as we can all do as designers
Totally.
and go off on a whole completely different tangent, which I mean, I'm a very bad person about that. And so, yeah, I think the structure was just really good. I had no idea what to expect. I talked to some other people that had done them before in other cities. And like I said, I was just really happy at the end of the night with really the whole, scenario.
Yeah, definitely. So if you are a next gener who's joined us in one of the cities, you totally know what we're talking about now. But if you aren't and you're interested in joining us, so what we do is bring together 15 different designers, all from different firms, and then 5 manufacturers, all from different material types. So it's really cool to get that diverse range of voices. And then everyone shares their story. Everyone's able to write a question in a notebook. So that's what they're talking about as far as moderating the conversation. And it's really cool because it definitely naturally starts at one topic and then we hear a keyword and that's we'll input one of the other questions. So let's dive in a little bit into what we were chatting about that night, relive some and give people a sneak peek into the conversation. So we definitely started out on deadlines and work-life balance. And I know, Renee, both of you guys really kicked off the conversation. So I'm curious just to hear about that briefly on like what it was like.
Well, I think the beauty of having 20s and 30-year-olds there is that you get someone that maybe has 1 or 2 years experience versus someone that's been in the industry for 10 plus years. So for those new designers, 3 years or under that are asking about burnout, if they're already feeling that, or if they're already worried about deadlines and work-life balance, it was nice to have the experienced designers there and our reps who have been in the industry before too, to provide feedback. The story I shared was that having been at my firm for 9 years, I've worked on educational projects for my entire tenure here. There came a point last year where I started to have some really big medical issues that just started compounding, and the snowball effect where it started small and then just got bigger and bigger. And the only thing I could figure out was stress. I think most of us in this industry are type A personality, very perfectionist driven, motivated. We're going to work on something until we think it's perfect. We're going to meet those deadlines. And that can be a lot. And so when we're on multiple deadlines, running from fire to fire, we don't take time for ourselves. So I approached the leadership of our firm in June to ask for additional time off. We have very nice benefits at my firm where we can have, a good chunk of PTO to use. I was requesting a little more than that. So I was able to take the month of September off to focus on health. And it wasn't a question of yes or no, can I have this month off? They were really willing to work with me. I think they've seen the concern and the burnout and just low lack of morale in the studio because of all of our deadlines. And so they wanted to set the tone that your life, your health comes first. And that's what I wanted to imbue to all the younger designers, is that you just have to speak up for yourself and put yourself first. A job is just a job, whether you really love it or it's temporary. It is only secondary to the life you're living.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boundaries came up a ton.
Yeah, it is. It's setting those boundaries, right? And I feel like when you just get into the industry, especially out of school, like school is like this whole thing, right? Especially design school and architecture school. Like you're in studio, you're there all night long, but you're also like 19, 22, 23. It's not a big thing, right? And it's fun. But nothing I feel like prepares you until you get into that first job situation of like those deadlines and how many hours you're working and really what's expected from you. And like Renee hit the nail on the head. I would say probably a huge percentage of us in this industry are those type A driven people. We like things pretty, we like things done right. And because we all know the consequences, especially in the design world, if things aren't done right. And so that responsibility is on us So it's like getting all that right. So when you get into like that job and then you're thrown into like the real world situation and then you're working those crazy hour weeks, like the stress level is a whole different real stress over like just getting a good grade, and I know I wasn't prepared for that when I started like my first internship and then my first like real architecture job. And I was lucky enough to then kind of have a mentor pick me up, basically, a fellow architect who's still one of my dearest, dearest friends, still an architect here in Denver. And she really helped, I feel, guide me in that, sense of, what to stress over, or like try not to stress over, though that doesn't always work. But I would say it's just as you get more experience and just more I don't know, like self-awareness about yourself, I think is what can help prepare you to like stand up for yourself, I guess, and really stand back and be like, wait, this is not the best situation. I love what I do. I love what I'm doing, but I need to be able to like take a moment, And so like what Renee said, being able to talk to that leadership, that's huge. Like a lot of people are like, they want to do that, but they're scared, right? And I think that's just kind of the unfortunate part. So I guess what I'm getting at as I kind of ramble on is the biggest thing, like advice that I ever got, and I feel like I could pass along is make sure you are keeping that communication open, even if it's a scary thing. At the end of the day, we're all humans. We can only do so much. And even your boss or your manager is still a human. And I know this is kind of like preaching to the choir, but it's like, get the courage, talk to them like, this is what I need. I know for me, I really am able to step back with my daily like life or weekly life, whatever you want to call it. Like being a mom now, like 2 years in is a whole different thing. It's kind of giving me that courage to be able to do it because of like having that balance with like my family and the job that I really love has also like given me more confidence. But I'm not saying like you'll have a baby to have confidence, but oh my gosh,
not a solution for confidence.
Yeah, not a solution, but again, it's just being able to like recognize it, have the open communication, and really stand up for yourself. It's okay. Like it is okay.
The best thing I've been told is that there's never going to be a perfect set of drawings. While we all strive for that, while that's our goal is to limit the number of change orders, limit the number of RFIs we're getting from contractors, there's always going to be those questions. So the best thing is to push to 97, 98%, because that last 2% of perfection is going to take you twice as long. And then there's addendums, there's ASIs, there's always ways to issue additional information without killing yourself for that deadline. And to piggyback off of mentorship, I think the beauty of being in a medium to larger size firm is that you do have project teams that give you that camaraderie during deadline weeks, that you're not the only one working an insane amount of hours. You can Teams chat, you can send emails, maybe you're in the office working with someone, and just have those friendships and those fun moments of teamwork pushing towards a deadline and seeing the success of a team's ability.
Yeah, totally. We talked a lot about hybrid work model in Denver. Just for everyone listening, like, do you guys want to give a quick little background on what is it like in Denver being a designer, as far as like, how has it shifted after COVID?
Wow. Well, I think most of the firms in Denver were 100% in the office. HCM kind of started to allow people to take 1 day a week to work from home if you had been in the firm for 5 years, if you didn't have meetings that day, and that was pre-COVID. And then obviously everyone worked from home for quite a bit during 2020 and 2021. Our office opened back up June 2020. So we were really only closed for a few months, but there were some people that felt the best work they could do was in the office. So we've always had an open door policy since June 2020 to where if you want to work in the office, great. If you want to work from home, great. We have done tons of surveys across the entire firm. So we have a couple other offices on the East Coast, just gauging the benefits, pros and cons of working from home and being in the office. I do find now that I get a lot more done in the office. I'm probably here 4 days a week, work from home 1 or 2 days a week. Sometimes it can be social hour where people that don't come in and they see friends and colleagues that they haven't seen in a while. They just want to talk to you. But I do think there is a level of creativity that you can't achieve virtually. You have to be in the office feeding off of people's verbal, nonverbal communications. And I do find that on days of charrettes, we have a lot of people coming into the office. But I think Denver, we've always had a laid back culture. So this hybrid work model is probably here to stay. And I know people that are moving from job to job, they're looking for that. They're requesting it. They're not going to go to a firm that's going to require your butt in a seat 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's definitely those firms here in Denver that I'll say, like, for me on the product side, because I'm in so many offices every day,
totally.
and everybody's kind of really, like, there are the ones that have been very early on, even like you're back in the office, like that's what we're doing, like there is no option. And then there's other offices that have totally closed their physical presence and are fully work from home, and they all get together, once in a while, which again is kind of, to the extreme of both things. But I agree. It's really been interesting to see, like, those designers that are moving around. That is, like, it's a topic of conversation now, where before in the design world, like, you didn't bring that up, there wasn't even like a thought. So
Yeah. It was interesting hearing some of the newer designers at the dinner really talk about the struggle as far as elevating their career and growing within and learning those things when their model was hybrid, as far as not having people in the office in that mid-level for mentorship. I'm just curious to hear from you guys as far as like elevating your career. I know, Renee, you also talked about how you mentor some of the younger designers. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that from you guys.
Yeah, so we've gone through several designers since the lockdown and coming back to the office. People just having a different mindset after the pandemic, that they wanted to try out different avenues and even go back to school. So we had 2 very new designers start this spring. We had a 3rd designer that has since left that started last spring. And I will say that we are approaching these new 2 designers differently than the 3rd. You learn so much in those first 3 years, just observing, asking questions, being able to turn over your shoulder and look at someone's screen, ask for help on Revit, tips and tricks, things that you just casually can say to one another while in the office versus, oh, should I chat with this person? I don't want to interrupt. It looks like they're in a meeting. Oh, I don't know. I don't even know this person. So being able to make those connections in the office is key. And so I've made it a point to come in whenever they're in the office. So if it's 5 days a week, then I'm here. I don't want them to feel like they don't have someone to talk to voice concerns, ask questions. And that's where I would say the 3rd person who has since left, I've told myself time and time again, it wasn't my fault that there were a bunch of issues, but I do feel like there was a level of mentorship that wasn't there because we were still not sure, do we come into the office? Is it safe to come in? And she struggled. And I feel really bad that I could not have been there to answer questions that maybe she didn't feel comfortable sending an email about because she didn't really know me. So the interpersonal connection that you make in office is so different than a virtual connection. And as leaders in a firm, I think it's important to make that effort to be there for any employee that needs your help, higher or lower on the hierarchy scale. But it's so hard to learn by experience if you're not experiencing it. And so I think that's where the hybrid model fails the younger designers.
Mm-hmm.
I know, I couldn't imagine, like, when I started a long time ago as an architect, like, we're designers, we're visual people. So if you don't, like you, Renee, like you said, right? Like, if you can't just go over to someone's desk and like just sit there for 2 minutes, like, how do you draw this detail? Like, you're sitting there at home, like, I don't know. And I know we've got all of our technologies these days, and that's fantastic. But it's that one-on-one, and it's going to be interesting, I think, even moving forward with so many more of these hybrid models. Like, what does that mean for this younger generation?
I think it's easy for the younger designers to do like that Homer Simpson montage where he like goes back into the screen of foliage. He just hides.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're visual, like, or when you're virtual, you can easily just fade away and fall through the cracks. And people, if you're new, people aren't thinking about you because they haven't met you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or even
And you
putting your
tell so
own
much from a
projects.
personality
Yeah.
anyways, from like an actual meeting you. Like, we could sit here all day long on a screen, and it's not like we're going to know each other.
Yeah. Nicole, I'm curious to hear from you
So.
just on the vendor side. How has that been? How's your experience been so far in this transition season of connecting with designers and really supporting them through mentorship and sharing new products and whatnot?
Oh, yes. So sorry, I think that froze up for just a minute, but just basically how like this whole hybridness I've been able to keep. Yeah, that's honestly, it's being creative, I guess, is really the answer to that, right? And I think in the beginning it was a struggle because it's like we all got really zoomed out, right? It's like we didn't want to sit there and just sit on the screen again and look at a picture. So now it is much better to be able to have that one-on-one connection and be able to get obviously our new products and our new messages out of like, how we can help and better, your project and your, what you're doing. But it was really rough. But like I said, being creative, getting people together, even if it was a one-on-one. In the middle of like the pandemic, I did a lot of trunk shows in people's driveways, a lot of them. And at first it kind of felt, a little silly, but at the end of it, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is great. Like I just welcome to my office, but like I said, I think I missed the beginning of your question. I'm sorry, but I hope that kind of answered.
I thought Denver reps were super creative, and I made the effort to go to as many as I could because most of them were outside. They were safe. We were distanced. They had a food truck. I can't even imagine what it was like to go from being able to present all your new finishes to someone to not. Like, your ability to sell products
that you need to
went
touch
from 100 to 0.
Feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I would say I was really lucky. I even like pre-COVID, I had already been part of a rep group here in Denver that had already been doing stuff together for a long time. And so it was really an interesting, like we already had our own kind of self-support group of being able to get things. And we were kind of honestly the first group to really do an event in person. And we were scared. We were like, but then as soon as the signups, because we did what everybody got used to, right? You did the sign up, like you're going to be here during this time. And we had all of our spots filled within like a little bit after it sending it out. And we were kind of like, as a group, shocked. Like, wow, people do miss like getting together. They miss touching, they miss feeling, they miss kind of like, normalcy, right? So, and after that, it just gave us like a lot more confidence to be like, okay, we can do little things. We can do little group things. We just be outside. And we're lucky here in Colorado with our environment that a majority of the year we can be outside and it's not even a big deal. So I think we also really lucked out compared to so many other parts of the US of being able to have that opportunity for sure.
Well, I think it speaks to the relationship the reps in the Denver community have with the design community. We are a mid-level market, but we're also a small town. So we have a great city, but we also have a really small world of interior designers here, small community. Yes, thank you. And just, I think there's a camaraderie amongst designers and reps that may not be present in other markets and cities. I'd like to say that there isn't a little bit of competition because there is, but especially at this dinner, we're not the ones that are making the decisions of going for new projects. We're not competing against one another directly, so we are able to share and have fun and commiserate together. So celebrate those successes and just really get to know each other pretty well amongst that small community we have here.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and the biggest thing too, right, is the support. Like no matter what your role, we all know in the design world, there is so many different ways you can be involved in the design world, right? You don't just have to have a title of a rep or an architect or a designer. Like there's like a whole range of gamut of things out there, right? But it really just goes back to that support in that community. Like Renee said, I think that is what I love about being part of it. I took a break from the design world for a little bit between being a rep and an architect, and I missed it. I missed that community and like kind of that like mindedness of like, loving the built environment, I guess, all the way around. And I really missed it. And I think that was eye-opening for me too. So
yeah, I think it's cool that we can really just come together as a community to talk about those topics that are typically off the table and really awkward, like whether it's crazy deadlines or crazy bosses, and really just support each other is so unique. And I think is something that makes it so special. I know we talked a lot about communication, so I'd love to touch on that a little bit, whether there was something that stood out as far as a tip that someone shared or something that's been really helpful for you.
Oh, communication. It's always something we can work on. I think in reviews or project briefs after a project has wrapped up, it's like, what did we do really well? We communicated really well on this project. What could we do better? We could still communicate better. So it's a never ending discussion about styles of communication, levels of communication. And there's so many different avenues to do that now with the different softwares, collaboration softwares. I think being in the office, again, it makes communication a little easier. You can show that you're a little more approachable to young designers, especially when you have a principal in charge in the office or project manager in the office. A young designer may have a little bit more gumption to go up and talk to them casually in the office versus writing a formal email. You're like, did I say this right? Am I asking the right questions? There's a little more formality to that, and less fluid than an in-person communication. But I think just talking, I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, just saying what's on your mind and not being afraid to speak up, ask questions. We don't know as experienced designers what inexperienced designers don't know. So again, we don't know what you don't know. We've always been, or we all have been in that position of, what does that acronym mean? Or I have no idea where to even begin on a schematic design book. What is even schematic design? So I guess you can Google what those acronyms mean, but it goes back to that. Like, there's no stupid question. So just being open and upfront, you're like, I'm new to this. I'd really love to learn more. You guys mentioned these specific things. Haven't heard of those before. What does this mean? So just being confident in that you're not the first person to have that question. And then just be willing to communicate. Maybe don't Teams message your project manager 15 times a day. Maybe keep it to, noon and 5 p.m. with questions that you need answered. So being a little polite with communication styles is important too.
And everybody communicates differently, right? So it's just, I don't know. I just wish there was like this thing when you're like a new person or even if you've been there a while, I wish there was like the, like not a test, but like, oh, how is your best communication? And then that way I know that's the best way to, work with you. I wish there was a little bit of that sometimes because
Like if everyone had to take their Enneagram test.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, I have not taken that. I feel really left out that everyone has these numbers and I don't have a number. But I mean, isn't that what the
Yeah,
what is it called again?
Enneagram. Like
Enneagram. Okay.
Enneagram.
Because we've done the Clifton Strengths Finders, which is like 36 strengths, which who remembers all of those? And then you're like narrowed down to 5. But I could remember a number, and I think I could associate those numbers much better than 5 of 36 strengths.
So true. Yeah. Well, back onto as we're scrolling on the Enneagram a little bit. I thought that something that really stood out from the Denver dinner was hearing younger designers ask these questions and then having that diverse range of experience being like, hey, I know it seems that your leaders might not understand this, but I think they want to help you more than you give them credit for a little bit. So I'd love to hear just a little bit, love to touch on that.
Yeah, I felt a little old to be there at first, but then as we got into conversation and hearing new designers' concerns, I was like, oh man, I've been there before. And not that I have the one and only experience that you can have after 10 plus years in the industry, but to just shine some light on them and tell them it's going to be okay. You're going to figure this out. You'll get there. I think there were a few people with like 3 to 4 years experience that felt like they should be maybe further along in their career, but it takes so much time to develop those skills and to become an expert. I think it's 10,000 hours creates an expert. And I have not, done the math to see how many years that is, but it takes time. And just because you have a few projects under your belt doesn't mean you know it all. You're never going to know it all. But I really liked hearing those young designer questions and reliving those days of being a new designer. And, the world's your oyster. There's so much out there.
But one thing that like to that point that I think also came up during that dinner with those younger designers is also they may not be in the right place for them. Hopefully they are, right? But to also not be scared to like, maybe if that place isn't like the perfect place for you, there are other options out there. And I know that's also a scary thing because I mean, for me, it was either like, am I in this in the long haul with this firm and like their like, philosophies and everything, or is there a better one that's going to be a better fit for me? And I would say like my mentor really helped me walk through that because I didn't want to be one of those people that just like, oh, this isn't working, bye, So it was really having that conversation and I hope that they can find that place that is going to work for them if it's not where they're at now. And even though it's scary, it's also, there's nothing wrong with that. It's life is short kind of situation, right? Like it's okay to take a leap and you may be in like find that better spot. And I feel like there was a designer at that dinner that talked about doing that. And it was like, a whole different exciting thing for her.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Culture is huge. That's one thing that I really love about HCM and that has led me to stay here for 9 years is that the people, the culture, the feeling you get when you walk into the office first thing in the morning, despite a busy day ahead, that means a lot to a professional career. And if you're not feeling the fit with your culture, leadership's probably not feeling that fit either. So there's a little bit of a communication that needs to happen there, a talk. And then if it's not the right fit, you part ways and they're going to find someone else to fill that seat. Don't think you're irreplaceable. Yes, you may be a wonderful designer, but they're always going to find someone to fill that seat. And then you can move on to something that aligns better with your career goals, your values, and what you need from a firm.
Yeah. And the other part of that too is, right, patience. I'm not a patient person, but sometimes it's like it takes time to also learn what you don't know, right? And sometimes on especially like larger firms with like maybe larger commercial projects, let's say, right? There is so much involved in that. And it's like being able to have someone to help guide you through it because sometimes you look at it and you think about the big picture of what you're doing and it can be super overwhelming, right? So it's like having that mentor to be able to like sit down, walk you through it. And then I feel like if you can find that where you're working, then you're in a good spot too. But it's having the patience is another part of it.
Yeah, so we work in education and a lot of our projects are bond dependent. So every 2 years, sometimes every year, but counties go for bonds to help raise money to build new schools. Right now, we are kind of in the midst of waiting for bonds to be released, new projects to come on board. We don't have the best projects. So it's just small renovation projects. And if you started 6 months ago, that's all you know. So if you give it maybe a year to 18 months, you're going to see some really cool projects come into the queue and get to work on those. But you start to develop those little skill sets that you need for bigger projects by working on smaller projects. So if you take each project as it is and find the positives and put maybe 1 or 2 goals towards each project of like, I'm really going to figure out stair details. How do different materials wrap around stairs? And then when you get to the larger project and you're going to have 5 different sets of stairs to work on, you have more experience. So to your point, Nicole, patience is a virtue. You're not going to get the best projects most likely when you start at a new firm, but if you give it time, you'll really reap the benefits of getting those large, awesome projects to work on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that you said that, because I feel like that comes up, especially as new designers. You're just thrown on something and really figuring out what you're most excited about to learn during that project, even if it might be the most, non-fancy project that you hope you wish for. I know you guys talked about how many job opportunities there are in Denver, and really leaning on your reps, knowing that they have a good view of what's going on in the industry.
Yeah, I would say on the rep side of that, it's really interesting. When we are in multiple offices every day, it's really always interesting. Like 2 situations happen. Either one, like a designer pulls you aside, like, hey, can we go to get coffee? Who's hiring? Can you help me out? That's always one conversation. The other conversation is on the other end of like maybe the principal designer or the principal or whatever. Like, hey, we are hiring. Do you know of anyone good that's looking? And so it's always like, you play love connection sometimes of like, oh, actually I do. And I know she's looking, you'll love her. And I know I've helped a few different designers over the years kind of, in that situation. And I wish I had known years ago about like, oh, like it's a little different on the architecture side, but I wish I had known more reps to be like, oh, like they know everything that's going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great benefit of getting to know your product reps, because they can go to bat for you. They can also give you great insight to other firms. I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've had really stressful months and I'm like, Nicole, is HCM different? Like, do we work a lot more hours than other firms? And you're not going to sugarcoat it. You can be like, no, actually, Renee, you have it pretty good. So yeah. I'm not naive in thinking that the grass is greener, but it is nice to get perspective on other firms of the same size, working on the same types of projects in your city, to know, are you with a firm that's really overworking their employees? Or is this just industry standard? Like, yeah, you're going to have some really tough weeks, but HCM has a great culture. You guys have some of the best people I've ever met that are so nice. So to hear things like that, to confirm you're at the right place or to help you find that better fit of a firm, is just something that reps can do wonders for.
And we're coming from a basically neutral position on that for the most part, which is what I find interesting on that, and
yeah, I mean, I'm still going to spec your stuff no matter where I work. So it's not going to affect your bottom line.
Yeah. But like I said, years ago, I wish I had known what I know now about that kind of little like behind the scenes networking, I guess.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I feel like we've touched so many of the topics that we spoke about during the dinner, and it's been so great just reliving the Denver dinner. I would love if we could just end on a quick positive and hear from both of you. Is there any career affirming experience that you'd like to share that you've had that is like, yes, I'm in the right field. Design is my vibe.
Yeah, even on my worst day, I tell people I am in my dream job. I am so passionate about design. There's no other industry I'd rather be in. And working on educational projects, I think, are probably the most rewarding. They may not be the sexiest. We don't have great budgets sometimes, but schools are becoming a lot cooler and more awesome to go to. And to open up a new school and see little kids walk in and be so excited, that just really warms your heart and makes you feel good about all those long hours you spent on that project.
Yeah, I love that. And I would say, cheers to you, Renee. Like, you guys are doing some really cool work out there. And then I guess to answer that question too, the other thing for me that makes me know is one, I did take a break for a little bit from the design world, and I really realized how much I missed it and I needed to be back in it. So now it's really fun, obviously, like this past 6 years to be back in it. But what gets me really motivated is really seeing like completed projects that maybe I've helped that designer like figure out like some wall detailing on, and kind of walk through the process, or like even say a reception desk with like some thermoforming on it, like something really cool and unique. But it's seeing that walking through the project with the designer at the end of the day, and being able to be like, oh my gosh, like here it is, it's real. Seeing how the people that are using the space are interacting in it, it's what I missed about design. And knowing that I can still have that from this perspective is really, really awesome. And really at the end of the day, it's when I can sit and help a designer, even if they're on a deadline, even if it's as simple as getting a sample to them for their client meeting the next morning, and being able to see like the relief on their face from that deadline, that makes me know that I'm like in the right spot for doing that. So
I love that.
I mean, we
Well,
literally get to see our drawings come to life.
true.
Like when you're a little kid sketching and you're like, oh, I wish this was real. What we do is real. And that's so awesome to see.
yeah.
It is. It is. Well, thank you both for being on the
Thank you.
podcast with me. And thank you, Denver, for allowing Network Next Gen to join your community. And thank you for being a part of ours. So I really appreciate you both.
Yeah, we appreciate you too,
Thank
Kelsey.
you guys. I really enjoyed this. And Renee, it was great to see you. And
I know. Yes.
Kelsey, thanks again. Like this has been really awesome.
Yeah, good. I'm so glad. All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.